What is the most important appliance in a kitchen? Is it the dishwasher, the refrigerator, or the stove? It's probably the refrigerator. But what do you think you're going to remember when you grow up? It's probably the kitchen stove. Nothing in your house brings out better childhood memories than cooking or baking with a family member. Anytime I smell cooking oil like Crisco, I think of my grandmother's frying up French fries for my brother and I when I was a kid. And then I remember that that's probably why I'm really fat and she was a really good cook. So when it comes to making memories with your loved ones, what kind of stove should you get like this one that's going to last a little longer than a TikTok dance challenge? Well, that's what we're going to try to solve today in this video, is what kind of stove is going to be reliable. Of all the different types of stoves that are out there, what should work for you? Well, I've been doing appliances for a while and we're going to answer that today. The first kind of stove we're going to talk about are your electric ranges or your stoves, units that have both the cooktop up top as well as the oven underneath. The first advice I was ever given when it came to stoves like this, when I started appliances many years back, was, Benny, don't sell glass top stoves. They're horrible to work on. They're going to break all the time. You're just going to have all kinds of nightmares with them when you run your business. And after all of these years, I found out that that was a really bad take on stoves. Having a glass top isn't as much of a big problem as you think it would be. And on top of that, generally any stove that you choose is going to be far more reliable than most refrigerators or washing machines, and probably about as reliable as a dryer. On average, you can expect an average stove to last between 10 and 15 years, but let's try to find some makes and models that are going to last just a little bit longer than that. One of the most important things when it comes to picking a stove are the features. What features do you actually need with your stove? What's important for your family? And make sure that you don't add any features beyond what you need. Any extra features you add is going to cost you both in money and in reliability. Some brands that have Wi-Fi are going to charge hundreds of dollars more for this feature, whereas other brands like, say, LG include Wi-Fi for free. But do you really need Wi-Fi for your stove? Just how smart are you? Can you tell me the time and make sure it's always updated so I don't have to guess, so we're never late to events? Can you tell me if I accidentally left you on and I've left the house and don't have to return to see if you work? Do you know who killed JFK? Well, I guess it really is smart. What features actually matter to you? Is it a large oven, a double oven, large capacity burners, air fryer, convection oven? Oh, by the way, air fryer is just a fancy new name for the word convection oven. It's a great, useful, time-tested feature that has a new name that actually works really well. But the secret is, if it says convection oven, it tends to actually be cheaper for the same thing as an air fryer. Ultimately, adding features to your stove beyond what you want or need adds additional complexity, cost, and reliability issues. I suggest trying to balance between the needs and the wants, because the more wants you have on it, the more you're going to need to call a repairman to spend a lot of money to fix the control board or something else on this type of unit. The more advanced you find the control board is, the more likely a failure cannot be replaced, because either the board on this is no longer available or it could be really, really expensive. A major thing to look at when you're investigating a brand new stove is these physical knobs here. Test them, try them, see what happens when you move them. If they're very smooth in operation and there's not a lot of physical resistance, chances are it's a potentiometer behind here, which is very expensive to replace. Even worse, watch out for any smooth top unit where the control board does everything, not only the bake and broil, but replaces the knobs as well. That adds on additional complexity to the unit, and all the energy and all the current is going to run through that board. So if there's an issue with the knobs, it ends up taking the control board out as well, and that can cost you an insane amount of money. So make sure to test these. The absolute best thing that you can have is a standard old school physical knob like what you see on this ancient hot point here. Surprisingly, they still make stoves with the old style infinite switches on these. They're affordable to replace, but more importantly, they are extremely reliable. When it comes to actual models, I'm a big fan of GE. The JBS 60 RKSS is probably the best, most affordable stove that you're going to find on the market. For a few dollars more, you can get the JB 735 PSS, and guess what? It has a convection fan on it, which does the same thing as that air fryer mode does that other stoves will have, but guess what? The word convection oven is going to save you about $200, even though it's going to be the same thing. Always look for convection oven over air fry, because the simple changing of words can cost you a ton of money on some models. Other specific models that I like would be like the Frigidaire GC RE3606, which it does have the air fryer label on it, but that one doesn't cost a whole lot more. That is a good model if you want one that is labeled air fry. My Gen Z kids that would save money on that, I guess, would call that bussin'. But I raised my kids right, so they really would never use that kind of language around my house, around me at least. For a double oven, if that's what you want, the LG LDE 441 3ST is a good affordable model that has physical control switches on it. I'm not a fan of the secondary relay board that LGs tend to have, because we see that relay board fail quite often, but it fortunately ends up being a failure on the more affordable relay board instead of the main board. So if you end up having a problem, it's a little bit more affordable to take care of, and it's a very easy board to replace as a DIYer. And now if you want a slide-in range, understand that every single one on the market is generally going to cost a king's ransom. You may pay $500 more for what otherwise is the same stove. Looks cost you money. My opinion is, if you're going to get a slide-in range, go ahead and spend just a little bit extra money and get a very reliable name brand like Bosch or Miele. The difference on, say, a Bosch 800 series unit may cost about $500 or $600 more for that slide-in range, but the reliability, I believe, is going to be a lot better than, say, the Samsung over here, even though it knows the truth about JFK. So generally, what brands overall should you choose from if you just had to go with the name and everything looks to have the same features? Well, my personal preference would go something like this: GE, Bosch, LG, and then Frigidaire for the better brands. Samsungs look nice, but they tend to be less reliable, and honestly, the worst brand I can think of right now isn't Samsung, it's Whirlpool. And I kind of got to question this hat here, because Whirlpool owns Maytag. Whirlpool tends to have very expensive, problematic boards that are difficult to replace affordably. Another brand, though, that I think that has the potential to be good in the future are Hisense model smooth top stoves. Although I don't like the exact one they have out right now because of how it's oriented with being able to replace the elements. The great thing about Hisense is that there's only about a 1 to 1.5% chance of warranty failure, and that came straight from the factory. I think in 2024, whenever they come out with the next revision of their stove, it's going to be a great choice for most people. But let's say you don't want to take the word of someone dressed up like an anime cosplay villain on what appliances to choose. Well, you don't have to. I went ahead and polled 200 other technicians who have as much or more experience than I do, and this is the list of brands that they chose as being the most reliable, and admittedly most of these are US technicians. They agreed with me and chose GE as the #1 manufacturer, with Whirlpool and Frigidaire being in second place, and then Bosch and LG being in the next tier. I certainly disagree with the Whirlpool recommendations, and I think that that's kind of based off of maybe some of the older legacy units that were legendary, being extremely well built, but that is just me. Now let's talk gas stoves. The best part about gas stoves is that they are probably the most reliable item in your house you're ever going to buy. And the good news is that they're unlikely to get banned, even though there's a lot of gas bans going on, unless you live in California. And if you want to learn more about the challenge of gas appliances in your house, especially gas stoves, I do have a video where we talk at length about all the intricacies about that. Brand recommendations for gas stoves generally follow the same idea for the electric glass tops we just discussed. But I would ultimately give the edge to LG among all the gas stove brands. And the reason for this is they produce a lot of their own components now, and this results in them lasting a little bit longer than other manufacturers. And this was confirmed by one of my competitors, Yale Appliance Repair, and I highly suggest checking out their blog. These are the reliability ratings they have for gas stoves, and you can see that LG beat out GE Profile just a little bit among the other brands. What models would I recommend specifically for gas stoves? The LG LRGL 5825F is a really good model. The Frigidaire FFCF 3054TS is another good one. And then the GE JGB 566 is another good model. And if I messed up any of these names, please check the description. I am dyslexic, and also my eyesight isn't the best, so memorizing these numbers is awful. Now, if you have the money for a higher end gas stove, I would suggest spending the extra money on a Thermador or a Viking unit if you can afford it. Those are the two best premium brands you're going to find in the United States right now. There is nothing else that compares to them. I've had experience with a few Viking and Thermador units, and they are amazing. They are very expensive. If you have to replace a part, it will cost you a lot of money. But when you get into that realm of stoves, you're going to get something that lasts double or triple the lifespan of any other brand on the market. Now, if you're wanting an absolute budget choice for a gas stove, I really like what Hotpoint RGBS 3000 has. It is the most minimalistic stove that's available on the modern US market. It has no features whatsoever. It just has 5 knobs and that's it, but it is rather well built. For Europe, I don't have a lot of suggestions other than you definitely want to go with a Bosch or a Miele unit, but one of the budget brands I would suggest is Hisense. They bought out ASCO, and they are a decent, what we would look at in the US as being kind of a budget brand. Now, when we're discussing gas stoves here, something very important to think about is venting. Now, I don't have any venting here to show you, but the reality is that whether we like it or not, gas stoves do produce a lot of harmful particles. They produce nitrogen dioxide and a few other harmful pollutants. So consider your venting. What kind of range hood you have, if it's ducted outside, which is the best. If it is a unit that is non-ducted, make sure that it has an activated charcoal filter in it. But let's say you can't have any sort of vent in your house. You absolutely want something that can circulate air with an activated charcoal filter. Something like a Levoit air purifier can sit on any countertop and run through the activated charcoal filter, and that would be a very good idea for you to use and try. If you were discussing brands of range hoods that are on the market, vented or unvented, one of the sponsors of our videos is Impava, and I really like what they have to offer. Anytime you order something from them, it ships straight from their warehouse direct to you. There's no middlemen involved, and that means you can typically get a better product. Their items are simple, and they do come with typically a 2-year warranty instead of a single 1-year warranty, which makes them a pretty good choice, and they tend to be very affordable. One of the most difficult things to talk about induction stoves isn't about how efficient they are or how great they are for the environment. The real problem seems to be part failures. One of the most frustrating things about induction ranges is the circuitry that's involved in making one. For example, the Samsung here has multiple generator boards that have to produce the power to deal with the induction range. Comparatively, there are a few brands out there like this Impava Induction Cooktop here that have individual generator boards for each of these burners, which is a huge advantage. Every major brand that I'm aware of generally has multiple large boards with them that marry multiple of these burners to multiple computer boards. And this makes them very scary to recommend from a maintenance and repair perspective, as well as your reliability. For example, the most affordable induction ranges right now, like the Frigidaire GCRI 3058AF, it's going to knock out either 2 or 4 of the burners. And the big problem with these generator boards is they are wildly expensive. Most generator boards go from $300 to $500 each on a Frigidaire, and for a GE, they can cost upwards of $1,000, which is incredibly expensive. So if something goes bad, you're essentially at the replacement cost for a brand new stove. My honest opinion is if you have any ability to have a cooktop instead of having a combo unit where you have your cooktop and your oven together, go ahead and get an induction. That's the best case scenario, because if something like this Impava breaks, you can easily replace the individual boards, or at worst case scenario, replace the cooktop rather than have to replace the top and the oven as well. This will save you a lot of money and headache, I think. At least that's my opinion right now. Now, if you absolutely have to go with an induction range, the best brand I think you can go with right now is either a Bosch or a Miele, and they are going to be very expensive. However, a Bosch 800 series induction range isn't going to be much more expensive than, say, a GE or a Whirlpool or a mid-range Frigidaire. Now, if you want to go cheap on a induction range, I guess that's okay. Something like a Samsung NE63B 8211SS may be a viable model. They run about $1,000, which is really cheap for an induction range. Did I just really recommend Samsung? Yes, but the reason that I would suggest that is they, again, run about $1,000, and the price of that versus, say, a Bosch or Miele, you may be able to buy 2.5 or 3 of those induction ranges and have them fail before you get to the price of a Bosch or Miele, and in the long run, you may not have actually saved any money. So Samsung, you owe me just this once. Going back to cooktops, we're going to follow, again, the general ideas for reliability we had from the text earlier. Frigidaire, GE, LG, Bosch, Miele if you can afford them. And I can't really talk about the exact price of this Impava model here because it could change a fraction of a Samsung or any other brand. This is what I would definitely go with because, again, if it breaks, I have a 2-year warranty on it. The generator boards are individual. I can replace them easily and probably affordably. And if it doesn't work out, I can throw it away and not be married to the oven. Although they do sell ovens too. Finally, on coil-top stoves, they are few and far between now in terms of availability. I didn't do an in-depth review on this Amana ACR 4303, but it's not that good. Don't get me wrong, it works just fine. The operation is decent, even with these thermal sensors that restrict temperatures so it doesn't catch grease on fire and burn your house down. It's just that everything else on this, really cheap. For example, the insulation in it, if you lift the lid up, you can see the insulation very easily. And it means that moisture can easily get into the padding and compromise it. So I really can't recommend Amana anymore. And I doubt the Whirlpool models of this style are going to be much better if Whirlpool even makes them anymore. If you're going to insist to go with a coil-top stove because you're a landlord, I would go with Hotpoint or GE. The Hotpoint RBS 160D is a bit better. It's not saying much, but landlords absolutely love coil-top stoves for durability for some reason. And I get that they end up being more reliable because of not damaging the glass, but as long as you don't put heavy objects directly above the glass top stove, you're going to be okay. When my family upgraded from a coil top stove up to a smooth top unit, we had no issues and we've been running a smooth top for about 5 years. But of course, I'm not storing anything heavy like ceramic plates or glassware directly above the stove. Just my collectible Dora the Explorer and Encanto cups for me and my loved ones and the people I value in my life. So what are some tips for keeping your stove lasting longer, kind of like this one here? Well, first, make sure that it's installed properly with a good, proper amperage range cord that has a strain relief on it. One of the biggest failures that we see in our shop with stoves are cords that are improperly installed onto the terminal block, either without a strain relief or it's not installed properly. If you don't do that right, it puts extra strain on the connection between the terminal block and the cord, which eventually will cause the cord to fail, arc, and destroy the terminal block. It's a pretty expensive call for a homeowner, and a proper strain relief and range cord is to the tune of $10 or $20. Next, try to avoid using the self-cleaning feature on your oven. I don't think this one has a self-cleaning feature on it. The reason that you don't want a self-clean mode is that it gets wildly hot, like my wife. If the stove insulation is compromised, the excess heat can also damage other components in the stove. So I suggest avoiding the self-cleaning feature, even though a lot of people are going to hate me for that. Newer stoves, though, fortunately have something called a steam clean feature, and that's actually really good. It uses water vapor from a cup of water. It's a much better option because the steam clean will not get as hot. It won't work as well as a self-clean will, but it is a much better, more reliable alternative. Now, for cleaning your stove, a good natural alternative is simply using baking soda and vinegar to clean your stove. Sprinkle the soda in the stove and then spray some vinegar in a bottle. Let it sit, wipe away. That trick also works great on these burner rings, whether you have a coil-top stove or a glass top element too. Another thing that we really haven't talked about much so far in the video is specifically in the wall ovens. Generally, you don't want to go cheap on those sorts of units because most technicians are going to charge you quite a bit more money to remove your wall oven to diagnose it. Unlike these, where most of the parts and assemblies can be accessed from the front and it's easy to pull them out, a wall oven requires a lot more sophistication to pull them out. Expect to spend an extra $100 to $200 on any sort of service call that you would get from a technician. So make sure that you buy a quality brand. And again, we've kind of listed the general brands for any sort of oven out there. And again, GE tends to be one of the top ones. Other brands beside GE that are also good would be Miele and Bosch. They are definitely the more expensive brands, but they've been doing ovens for a very long time. And the quality that cost you a lot of money in the beginning could save you money in the end once, again, you factor those service calls in. I do like GE ovens quite a bit. The higher end cafe line from GE tends to work quite well in addition. And I still like Impava units for your moderate to low end. They have a longer warranty than most other brands. And generally when a company has a longer warranty, it's because they believe that that product is more durable. So that is another choice for you if you want something that is factory direct on the lower to moderate end of pricing. But in the wall ovens are still going to be very expensive no matter who you choose. Another brand I really like on the ovens I have dealt with personally is Viking. Viking is super expensive. You are not going to get a cheap one, but they tend to be great for people that are looking more on the commercial side of doing a lot of high volume baking. So they are worth it if you can afford them. Here's the big secret or little secret about microwaves. It almost doesn't matter which brand you buy, because all of them, or almost every single one of them, is made by the same company. Midea actually makes all the microwaves, from my understanding, for GE, Whirlpool, Electrolux, Maytag, Sharp, and many other brands out there. The only ones that are actually made that aren't by Midea are going to be Samsung and LG, and those are the only other two brands that I'm aware of. So which Midea is the best? Well, if you're going to ask me, it's probably the collection at Walmart for $19.99, because if I can laugh and pray in 90 minutes, well, that's a pretty good amount of money well spent. Oh, wait, I got the wrong Midea. It's Midea. It's a Chinese mega corporation. But the thing about Midea microwaves is, I'd almost say just go to them direct and buy a Midea. You see a lot more of their air conditioners around because it's the same sort of idea with air conditioners. They make about 70 to 80% of all the worldwide ACs as well. Just buy the features that you want, but try not to overpay for these smart features that you think that you want on your microwave. Everything adds to the complexity, which can cause the reliability to go down. The one big secret about microwave reliability, other than making sure you change your activated charcoal filter, is never open the door when they are running. The reason for this is a lot of energy and current goes through the door switches here because it has to shut them off as a kill switch when the microwave is running. All that current passes through that door switch, so by opening it up, you're causing it to spark and damage. So if you have to open up the door prematurely, make sure to actually go ahead and turn off the microwave. It's going to save you a lot of reliability issues. We see it very common that these door switches and door locks go bad. And if you have a technician repair that, it's a very cheap part, but it's very expensive for them to repair because they still have to do the service call. Well guys, that's it for the video. I went through every stove and oven combination that I could think of. If there's any brand, make, or models that I like that I have missed in the video, I'll make sure to include a link in the description for all the different models. I found out oftentimes I make suggestions and they get discontinued when I do the video live like this. People write down the numbers and say, Ben, it isn't there anymore. But make sure to check the description, check the product tags for that as well. Now I'm just going to play with this microwave and see if it really is a smart microwave. Are you a really smart microwave? Are you able to microwave stuff to perfection and know what's inside? Do you know who killed Tupac? Oh my gosh.